So what happened is I'm laying there, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm actually kind of looking at the stars through the window. We're trying to, we're just driving and cruising along, and I don't really have any thoughts. And I swear I saw this thing just pop up out the window. So so I can kind of tell a funny story actually. So
about Bigfoot?
About Bigfoot, yeah.
All right.
Well, it's not a funny story, but it's a true story that happened. Started moving away, and I just looked at her and I was like, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then it started going faster and faster, and then it started going like this really, really fast, and it just disappeared.
On this very special two-part episode, we have with us none other than Ben Chasteen, who's a co-host on Edge of Wonder. He's on the Rise TV live show, and of course has his own show called Ben Solo. We talk about the crazy experiences that we both had while growing up. He also goes into exploring for Bigfoot and some of the strangest stories he's ever witnessed. Some of his stories are being told for the first time ever on camera. So strap yourself in, hop in that UFO, and journey with us through the spooky door.
And welcome to the show. As you can see, we're in a completely different environment with a completely different sound.
It doesn't even look dark or spooky at all.
I was say, you have this nice background here.
I feel like I'm on a cabin on a lake or something. I'm not.
We're not too far away from that. We don't have our microphones, headphones.
We're on the side of a mountain.
We have my brother Ben Chasteen with us.
Hey guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for being here. Actually,
right.
More so.
So we are in middle of nowhere, New York.
Yeah.
Side of the mountain, middle of nowhere, New York.
That would be a good
Bigfoot country.
Yeah, Bigfoot country.
Lots of friendly
sure.
deer here.
Yeah, we did actually have.
Yes,
we did try to go out and look for Bigfoot.
We found not Bigfoot, but we found some interesting things.
We did.
So.
Yeah.
So right.
Yeah, I mean we can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about.
I was like, but we were like waiting for this so much now. I'm like, okay, I don't know where to start. I guess you know what. Go ahead and go with like your earliest first memory of.
Well, I think it's also to explain
that
like the reason you're on here is because you've experienced things.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, so we started, the show and everything, like Rob and I, just because a lot of it had to do with these experiences that I've had growing up. And I would tell everybody about all these crazy experiences.
I mean, you and I have experienced
stuff. I know, exactly. I mean, we can get into that, right? So that kind of where I was working and everything, everyone kind of knew this about me, and then I started doing a lot of Facebook Lives, and then people started saying, you should do your own show. So originally I was going to do a weirder news kind of show. That was originally the plan, and then just kind of migrated, or not migrated, but just morphed into what we're doing, I guess, But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the whole start of it, with Rob and I just having these crazy conversations of all these things that happened to us in the past, because he's got some crazy things too that actually happened to him. So, that kind of was the birth of it, I guess. So.
I think one of the hardest questions though is when people always ask you, and I'm sure you've had this happen to you, what's the first thing you get, and people have asked me that, and I don't remember. Yeah. There's just been so much stuff, I don't remember a certain isolated first moment that was the first thing that happened to me.
I think, actually, with me, I think I can answer that question, because it was such a... Well, yeah, it is, because there's actually two things, and one of them was what happened... Well, okay, UFO, there's couple things going on, right? We have, paranormal things, kind of ghosts activity, and the other one would be, kind of UFO experience. I guess, going back to even younger days, that's kind of what was the paranormal things. Something happened with that. So I guess, well, then the other aspect is the UFO aspect of it. So, one of the first things that really started happening that I would say was kind of really freaked me out was, so you and I used to sleep in the same room, right? I don't know how old we were.
Because
you were
was this back when we lived in Dublin?
This is right when we lived in Hilliard. So it was probably, I think it was, because the weird house, right? We lived in Hilliard. We had this.
I've heard some of it.
Well, it's weird because it was the house is brand new.
The house was brand new.
So
Our family built the house. It
Right.
wasn't-
We
it
didn't
wasn't
build
like-
it by brick by brick when we
but
ordered the house.
It was an apartment or a subdivision,
Yeah.
and we just chose the house, a stupid house, and then they built it, and so I even thought when I was younger, I was like, oh, it's our house, like no one's lived in here, we don't have anything to worry about.
Right, and it was like, nope.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise,
Yeah.
exactly. Like we found, I think like the whole area was just. It was something built on something weird.
And we've talked about, I mean, like the whole, I think like Hilliard in general.
I was gonna say, I feel
Because,
like
like,
Hilliard in
it's
general,
weird.
between
Because,
things
people-
you've told me, which
Yeah.
you're telling me, then
Hilliard is
Mallory's.
weird.
The Big Lots there is haunted.
That's what I heard.
Big Lots is
Yeah.
haunted, and I've known people who work there who talked about like crazy stuff happening there. And then like down the road there's Meyer, and supposedly that's haunted, and like weird stuff like has happened in
and
the
Dad
back.
used to work at a video store called
Mammoth Video.
Mammoth Video, yeah. So I didn't even know this until like we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, sometimes videos would fall off the shelves. And I was like, you didn't even tell me this. He's like, yeah, he's like, I don't really, he's like, I don't think about it at all, and he doesn't get freaked out, he just doesn't get scared.
I know.
But he's like, yeah, sometimes like the video would fall off
Well,
the
then
shelf,
Mallory's house is only literally a mile away from there,
that's-
and then our
that's
house
the
is
same
like
story.
a quarter of a mile from where we're talking about. So it's like Hilliard is just.
Hilliard's weird.
Something's going
Everyone's
on.
Oh,
watching,
my
like,
first
what the
apartment in
heck is
Hilliard was
this?
haunted too, because the kid committed suicide like right outside. So weird stuff happened there.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm really glad I don't live in Hilliard. Now I have
You're
like
missing
zero
out.
plans to ever
That was
like.
weird. Well,
venture
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
that's
anyway,
where
go-
everything weird
so,
happened.
all right, rewinding.
So going back. So anyway, I don't know. I guess maybe I was actually kind of scared as a kid. Like I really was, because I don't know. I was really freaked out, especially in that house. So you and I would sleep in the same room, and then so I don't know how old I was. Maybe like we lived there for like 2 years. Maybe I was like 11 or something like that. And I'm laying in bed, and you're like sleeping, and I just feel this thing that kind of jumped up on the bed, and then it kind of like moved really fast, and then it went on the pillow, and my head actually moved on the pillow because it moved the pillow, and it just felt like then something just like touching my head and then like go away like that,
Super weird.
And I like
God.
jumped up and freaked out. We did have a cat, but our cat was like, it just like slept underneath my parents' bed. Like it
But and
just
also
wouldn't come
like
out.
as somebody that has cats, when your cat's on you, you know it's your cat.
You know it's your cat.
Right.
You know it's your cat.
You just know. It's like
They let you know.
I even
that.
know like when my cat jumps on the bed, I even know which cat it is.
Yeah, and
'Cause
this
the way they
in my mind, it was like a hand. It just felt like a hand. That's the best way I can possibly describe it. I completely freaked out. I was like terrified. I like ran in my parents'
Dude, I have
room.
no memory of this.
And then because you were asleep, and I like
Well, 'cause I
I,
can
felt
sleep-
horrible because I was like I left my brother there. and I felt so bad because I left you there, and it like terrified me actually. Like after that, like I had a really hard time sleeping alone for a very long time just because of these like weird things, and like I didn't even really know at this point really what to believe and what to think about ghosts and everything else because. We didn't really experience too much in the home. That was kind of it.
Dude, it was just like the
was just
biggest
weird.
thing with me in the
But
house
I hated our basement.
was the basement was I remember like we would never play in the basement.
No.
Like, we would never
It was
blame-
always cold.
Yeah, it was always cold in our basement.
Yeah.
And maybe it was just well insulated. I mean, that could be one thing, but it was always cold in our basement. And then I ended up sleeping down there. I actually lived in a basement for a while. Back I forget how old I was, like 18 or something like that. Weird. And I just remember like I never really felt comfortable sleeping down there.
I didn't either.
And
Because I was
then-
down there too for a while too.
And then I remember like we've never played in the basement. I
Yeah.
never liked going
never
down the
really-
basement.
yeah.
I remember if there was like something downstairs I wanted to play with.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go down downstairs and grab it. I didn't want to go down there and grab it because I just hated our basement. And then I just remember like never feeling alone. Ever in the house. I never felt alone, which to me is like one of the worst feelings ever when you live somewhere. And then I just remember like always just at night always having problems sleeping.
yeah.
I always had problems sleeping.
Yeah,
in
it
the
was
house.
kind of weird. And then I remember, like, as I got older and started becoming a little bit aware of these things are going on, then I actually felt things in the house. And I remember one time I was watching TV by myself, like everyone was gone, and I just felt something behind me, and it was like this shadow that was kind of in the hallway. I couldn't really see it really clearly, but it was like something it was there. And I was like, dude, this is weird. I was like, how is anything here? Because we're the first people to live in this house. Like, what is going on?
Like poltergeist. Or
So I was like, this is
that
so
was what
strange.
I was thinking about.
So, yeah, that's why I kept thinking about it. And then, like, I just felt like our basement was just, like, something was going on in the basement there, for sure.
Well, Ian, who lived in the basement for a while.
So, yeah, Ian was one of our friends.
He was like, he
freaked out.
He texted me, like, I remember it was like 2 a.m, because I was upstairs asleep, and he texted me, and he was downstairs, and he was like, dude, I just saw a woman just walk through your basement.
Well, that's a big fact.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
He was just like, I was like, what? He's like, yeah, man, I'm down here trying to sleep, and the woman just walked through your basement.
Yeah,
you
it
know
was
what
a weird place.
I think was like
really
the
weird.
most ridiculous thing too, like looking back on like, you know, you like talking about being afraid to sleep by yourself. It's like I had similar stuff when you're like little too, and like I remember being afraid to go to sleep sometimes, which is partially because when I was like really little, I don't know if you guys remember the show called Sightings, and it was like gootings. It was like ghost stuff.
I do
and it was
remember
like
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was like
yeah.
I was
do
like
remember
super
that.
obsessed with it, and I always watched it. So it's part of me scaring myself, part of me just like I've seen that. Like you hide under the covers and like thinking nobody's gonna get you, but like looking back as an adult, I'm like, if an alien was really like coming to get you, like what's that gonna do?
Yeah,
like
really, what is that gonna do?
what's gonna be hiding under the covers?
So then, like, you moved down to our parents' house. You moved in your first apartment. You didn't really have.
Yeah, I always forget this.
Was the first apartment you had was nothing was really weird. It was more the apartment you had later on in Dublin.
Yeah, because when nothing. There's really not much I can explain with the places that I moved into after that. It was like some other places that happened with some of my friends where they lived and everything. Like Chris, my friend who died. I was in the band together with him and stuff, and that's a whole other story we could potentially get into. But that's a crazy story. But it was, I moved in with my another friend of mine in Dublin, Ohio. Because like I forget what I was doing. I was like doing like a bunch of different things, and I was working. And he was like, "Hey, do you want to? You can stay in our basement if you want, you know." And I don't really even know why I decided to do it. And I was like, "Yeah, sure," because really it was like I was saving money, and I didn't really need to pay that much rent living in his basement. So I moved in, and instantly it was just a really, really weird vibe in that place. Like every night I felt that I had to like put up like a shield before I go to bed. I actually could feel something in the ceiling that was trying to reach me. And it is weird because like there's not many windows down. I think there was like one window, and I was like, I think it was just this test for me, like mentally. It was like, can I deal with this? Can I handle this kind of thing, you know? And so like every night I had to do this. I had to like put up this like shield to make sure like nothing was going to attack me in my sleep. And some nights I couldn't deal with it, and like I would literally have these like horrible nightmares.
I don't even know how like you would fall asleep. Like I don't think I would be able to.
I don't even know. Because I don't even know if I could do it now. It was just so weird. It was just like.
Well, it's like what Mallory was saying though. It's like once you get accustomed to something, you just kind of.
It is.
It's
true.
like once you get like used to like.
Yeah, because when you first move in, you don't deal with it right away, right? It's kind of a slow thing where you're just like, man, what is going on? And then you're like, man, I need to start like.
Even
doing this.
So even where I live, I've had experiences where I currently live.
Yeah.
And then it's like it resides and goes away, and I'm like, okay, I let my guard down. Then something like 6 months to a year later happens again. I'm like, oh shit, like.
Right. Exactly. so then we So one day we were like leaving, and we were going somewhere, and then we went through the garage. We got in the car, and he's like, "Oh, did you lock the door?" And I was like, "Oh no, I didn't lock it." And he was like, "Oh, I'll go lock it." And he like ran up there and tried to open the door, and then he came back in the car, and then he's like, "The door's locked." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't lock it." He's like, "Yeah, I didn't either."
Okay.
Let's just go. So we just left.
Not talk about it.
That was like one of those things we didn't really talk about. And then the final thing was like I was watching TV one day, and I kind of forget this because it freaked me out so much. And like literally, I am not over exaggerating or lying at this point. There is a shadow figure that just stood between me and the TV. Came from the stairs, like my room, and then it just slow, and I'm like watching it, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And then it just stops, and it was literally like a shadowy image I was seeing through the TV. I just totally lost it. I called somebody right away, and I just ran outside, and I was like talking on the phone the whole time, and I think I even waited for my friend to get home because I couldn't even go back inside. And that was when I was like, man, I don't know if I can live here anymore. This is really rough.
See, I've never seen that, like, and I don't know what I would do if I ever saw a shadow figure. I would just...
It was seriously, it's something I've never even brought that up on our show because it's something I just kind of forget about, and I purposely try to forget about, and then when I'm talking about things, it's like, oh my gosh.
Well, that's what happens when you and I get together. We start remembering weird, crazy stuff that we, like, even I kind of...
Yeah, I mean, people even ask me if I've seen shadow figures before, and it's like, I have, but I always forget that, and it was so clear.
Dude,
and it's like, it was like telling me, like, this is what is, like, been attacking you, kind of thing,
So I remember, like, we had the storage unit in Hilliard that we used to practice at in a band.
Yeah.
And that place was also creepy, and because, again, just...
I remember you guys used to...
And I remember this is my first time with a shadow person. Because I've had like 4 or 5 experiences now with them, but I was in there by myself, completely in the building by myself. It was a 2-story building. It's completely alone. I was in there like recording music or doing something. I was by myself, and I see something like walk by the storage unit I'm in. It's a dark shadow, just like walk by. And I was sitting there like playing, and then like I was like stopped, and I just thought to myself, I was like, I need to leave. It was like almost like a Looney Tunes like double take. It was like I saw it and I didn't like react until like 10 seconds later, and I was like, I need to leave right now. And I remember I like was fumbling because was rushing to get out of there. I couldn't even lock the damn door correctly, and I pretty much ran out of the building. Okay.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I've had some experiences with shadow people. Okay, so you move out of that apartment.
Yeah, so I moved out there, and then, I kept moving, like, around back and forth with different people, and then I'd go back home for a while. So, but the other, kind of, like, going back now, so that was kind of, like, the paranormal stuff, and then, the first time I saw a UFO, actually, like we were talking about, like, big experiences, like, that was really what kind of changed me. Because I was 16 years old, and it wasn't really that late at night, and there was...
I remember this.
Yeah, there was this girl that lived like close to us, and her and I were just like laying on her father's car, like looking at the stars and everything. And I thought I was looking at Orion because there was the 3 stars. They were just there. They weren't moving. And then all of a sudden, the middle star just like slowly started moving away. And I just looked at her and I was like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And she's like, yeah. And then it started going faster and faster. And then it started going like this really, really fast. And it just disappeared. And I was like, what the heck, And they were both just like, I can't believe we just saw this. Like, what did we just see? And then she was like, it's getting late. I'm going to go inside. And I'm like, you're going to leave me out here alone?
Yeah,
like,
we're not even going to talk about this. You're just like, bye.
She would have lived like not even a block away.
It was literally like down the street. But I remember walking home feeling so freaked out. And actually, now that I think about it, I always felt freaked out at night. I would go to my friend's house at night, like on my bike or anything. I always constantly felt like something was watching me in the whole neighborhood. And this is like the first time I really thought about it.
Even the kid next door and I, Greg, even him and I would like be out there like playing at like, be like around midnight, and I'd be like, dude, I'm going back inside.
Yeah.
Like for no reason. We'd be like just doing stuff. It's not like I'm tired or anything. I'd just be like, dude, I'm going inside now.
The interesting thing is, and I'm just like putting this together right now because I never really thought about it until now, how I felt freaked out, like the whole, in the whole neighborhood. Like sometimes at night, I wouldn't, and I actually enjoyed walking around at night, but it was so quiet because, everyone went to bed early, and it was just that's why it was kind of eerie. But that whole area was a forest at one point in time, like before we were there, because on the other side was pure forest.
And now it's all gone.
And now it's all gone.
Yeah, it's all
homes and everything else. So it's like, I don't know, like what we're experiencing is like in a paranormal aspect, or if it's like there was things that lived in that forest and like maybe other dimensions or something.
Right.
I have no idea.
I don't know, but I had something kind of weird like that happen to me once. So I grew up in the country, I've told you this, and like we had like the way our house was set up. There was like the downstairs, there was like the kitchen, there was the dining room, and then there was like a window seat. And it like from the window seat, if you were sitting in the window seat, you could see into the backyard and you could see up in the sky pretty well. And I remember I was home alone. I think it was like early high school maybe. I was home alone in my house. I don't remember where my parents were. I think that time my sister was in college. So it might have been like later in high school, but anyway, the point of the story is I was home alone. So I'm home alone, I'm sitting in the window seat and I'm reading a book. So it's like window seat, it's like say this is the window seat, and then our dining room table is like right here. It's like I'm looking and like I look out I'm just reading, just occasionally glancing up at the stars, and I see like lights like in the back of our yard, like in the sky. And there's like a field back there, so it's like kind of in that vicinity. So it's far away, and I'm just like, oh, it's an airplane. In the country you see flashing lights, you're like, airplane.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, I just kind of keep glancing up, and then I notice like it gets closer, and I'm like, because you bottom of an airplane, you see the lights of the wings and everything. I'm like, that's not an airplane.
You never told me
That's not an airplane.
You never told me the story.
And because it was only like 2 lights, and they were very close together, and it was like that we were watching the other day when they were like changing colors. It was doing that, and I just remember like flying up out of my seat, turning the lights off, and I just like ran under the kitchen table and just was like this. Like, and I just like, I don't even know how long I sat there, because it's like, it felt like a long time. It was probably only like 5 minutes, but it felt like hours, just because I was like, I don't know what to do. Like,
I remember the night you saw the first UFO, because I don't know where I think I was downstairs doing something.
Yeah.
And I remember you scared the living shit out of me, because you bust in and you're like, Mom! I can't believe what I saw. And you're like yelling, and she's like, what the hell are you doing? And like, I remember I was like doing it, and it scared the hell out of me, because like, I remember like we both thought you got stabbed or something like that.
I was so freaked out. I was like running home as fast as I can, looking behind me, thinking like I was gonna get abducted by aliens.
I remember like the door slammed, like we all jumped, and we're like, what the hell? Dad's like, what the heck is going on? What's going on?
Wow, it's like, I don't really remember. I just remember running in the house.
I just remember that part. I just remember being mad at you, so I was like, what the hell are you going on?
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah.
There is one story I wanted to ask you about. I don't know if you remember this. You told me about this a long time ago. I think we were in the car. I was young. I remember you were talking about you were really young. We were driving back from Akron late at night, and I was asleep. Mom and Dad were up front. Dad was driving, I think. You looked out the window and you saw a puppet.
Yeah, okay. I had a feeling you were going to talk about this.
This
like
is one
I've
great.
never...
Of all the weird shit I've heard from people, this is by far one of the weirdest stories I've ever heard.
I'm like really even like kind of like embarrassed to even tell the story. Because
well, now George set it up.
It's so weird.
It's the weirdest thing, and it's like, a lot of my experiences I now kind of have answers for. Like I've really kind of figured out what I've experienced or what it was or anything else. This is the only one that for the life of me, like I can't even possibly fathom an answer with this. Like everyone I kind of like, if I bring it up, most people are like, are you sure? Like the first thing everyone says, are you sure you weren't asleep? I'm like, I was not asleep. 100%. You were asleep because I was looking at you. I was just laying there. I was like I wanted to fall asleep, but I was like wide awake.
Yeah, it was like we're driving back from Akron.
We were driving back in Akron.
Was it Christmas?
Yeah, it was around. I think it was around Christmas. We got a rental car. We had like a big van kind of thing. So Jordan was like in the other seat, and I was in the back seat, I think. And it's the weirdest thing. Even saying it is going to sound weird, because I don't think I've known anybody who had this experience. Like anytime I kind of talked about it, and I've never publicly talked about this.
I know, that's why I wanted to bring it up. Because I was like,
so
what other platform are you going to talk about?
Yeah, so I think it was like like maybe in the late 80s, probably. So what happened is I'm laying there, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm actually kind of looking at the stars through the window. We're trying to, we're just driving and cruising along, and I don't really have any thoughts. And I swear I saw this thing just pop up out the window. The best way I can possibly describe it, it looked like if you think of like the Muppets, right? Think of like what American or a Native American Indian puppet would look like.
Okay.
That's the best way I could possibly describe it. It had like black hair, and it was red. And it just kind of jumps up outside. And mind you, we're going on the highway for like 65 miles an hour. And it's going like this. It went like left and went right. And then it saw me and it was like, and it just fell backwards. And I just like jumped up to the window and I was like, what the hell? And I was like, I probably didn't think that, but I was like, what? And so I'm like looking out the window and there's nothing there. I figured it like whatever happened fell. So I'm trying to like, I've been trying to rationalize this in my head for 30 years now. So I was like, maybe it was like a car that was driving next to us. And this is what someone else pointed out and like put out, a puppet out the window. And I was like, yeah, but the hair was straight.
Yeah, that doesn't explain the movement.
Was straight. Yeah.
The hair wasn't... So you didn't tell me all of that.
Yeah, so the hair would be... I mean, if it was... Imagine going 65 miles an hour and putting a puppet out the window with hair, it would be like...
Well, and on top of the arms would be...
Yeah, everything would be like this. And
you wouldn't be like, what was that? You would be like, oh, that was a puppet.
Yeah, you would see, you'd be able to see it, so... Then I'm like, okay, that doesn't... And also, when I jumped out the window, it wasn't... I mean, I was like laying down, too. It wasn't like... kind of like looking up, because we had a big van, so it just doesn't make any sense. And I've like even tried to find this puppet online to see if it was like, I haven't even found anything that remotely looks like this thing online or anything like any kind of puppet. Or I've looked everywhere. We should actually, that's one thing I haven't checked is like a forum to see if this happened to other people
or comment section below.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious, because I've never shared this because it sounds so ridiculous. It was more of a sense of just like, what was that? Like I wasn't freaked out. It was just like, oh, like what? Like what was this? Like where did this come from? Like how did and it was almost like it recognized me when it saw me. That was the weird. It was just it couldn't have been someone controlling it. It was like they looked left and they looked right. And it's like when they moved, the hair was kind of, it wasn't like blowing in the wind kind of movement, and it's just, it was seriously, it's probably one of the weirdest things that ever happened to me that I just can't even begin to say.
That seems really
odd. And I definitely was not asleep because I even checked to see if Jordan saw it, and Jordan was asleep.
I really wanted to ask you about that one.
Yeah, it's so weird. I still like, I actually, it was funny, I was thinking about it. Because someone was talking about the Muppets or something, and it made me think about it. And I still looked online recently to see if, like, I typed in, like, Native American puppets, red, Indian, like, whatever I can think of to try to find this thing. Nothing. There's some Muppets that were kind of in a similar style, but this was, like, a very, like, it was really
Dude, that was, I don't know, that's one of the ones I'm just like, huh?
Yeah.
But I have no idea on that one.
No idea. I've talked to some people and they're like, I don't know either. I mean, it's like...
Dude, I've had some...
Is there like alien Muppets or something?
Something.
I don't know, man. Like,
it was super weird. It was really weird. So that's one of the ones that has definitely, made me... But it's been a question. Like I said, I've had some other things happen to me that I kind of figured out now in the process, kind of what it was and what's going on and everything else. And
I think sometimes though, even when you figure out what it is, you're like, it doesn't make it any better. You're just
that doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just so strange. It's just like one of those really weird things, Like I have a couple of friends who, they actually didn't think they saw Bigfoot. They thought it was just some dude in a gorilla suit, and after talking with him, I'm like, dude, you're in the middle of nowhere and you see some guy in a gorilla suit and then he just kind of disappeared. He's like, yeah, but it was kind of weird. It just had to be fake. That doesn't
I'm like,
sound
dude, you're like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
Why would
so
somebody be like,
he told
that guy, I'm
me-
gonna wear a
He
girl
actually
suit from.
told me this story earlier today.
Yeah, he
And I was
didn't want us
like-
to mention who it is, but yeah, you
We're
guys
not gonna
talked to
mention
him.
names.
Yeah, I
Yes.
was like, okay.
Yeah. I was
Okay.
like, yeah, and I'm like, dude, that's definitely, you just had a Bigfoot experience, seriously, And then this is like, this is a whole other topic that, it's one of those things where you're not really sure if they exist or not, but then you start seeing a lot of, now that after doing what I'm doing and everything else, it's like, oh, okay, I can actually even tell people what to look for and things like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like when we went out.
We did go out. We
We
tried.
went out yesterday. Well, me and Elaine saw, I still can't, the rocks. Like, we found, like, this pile of rocks that they looked like, maybe fell off the side of the mountain or something in the middle of the forest, and they're just piled on top of it. Like, no man would have carried those
huge
and like
boulder
when
rocks.
you look close, there was like almost a hole that they were in too, and it was like, then I was like, okay, well, I can believe maybe this like fell from somewhere, and I'm like looking around at where we're at, I'm like, there's there's nothing here.
It's a body that got dumped in the ground and they were trying to cover it too. I mean,
well,
we are kind of not
so-
too far away from New York City.
Well, it's just like, it was just very odd too, because, well, still, even then, like, I don't know, it doesn't explain how the rocks got there.
Right.
It doesn't explain it.
Well,
and
that's a characteristic of, like, once you start understanding how, like, Bigfoot, because we've been researching this stuff for so long.
Wait, break it down. What's the characteristics?
Okay, yeah, so
let's do it.
So, like, what, this is like what people. There's certain things to look for. Like, for example, like, after doing this for so long and talking to so many different people who, like John Vonko, who's on our show, like, he's very good at this stuff. So I found out, like, through doing all these research and experience and everything, that's the kind of stuff you're looking for. So when people, I hate to say hunting Bigfoot, I just don't like saying that. So let's just say, like, Bigfoot exploring or searching for Bigfoot, you'll start seeing what we call structures. So you may find, like, a giant rock, like, on top of another rock, and you just may pass it and you're like, well, that's kind of odd, like, I don't know how that happened, and you just don't really think about it and you just keep going. But that's, like, a really good indicator that there could be Bigfoot
I think
around.
had you not told me all that prior to us, like, going out, I would have done that. I would have walked past it and not thought anything. And the other funny thing about it was, like, when I walked away, I realized I started walking around in other spots, and I noticed, like, large boulders that had been sitting there that had, like, they sit in the forest and the moss starts to grow over them.
Yeah.
And I took a picture of it. I showed Jordan. There's not a, like,
Moss.
trace of moss.
Yeah,
so it's clearly not even been there that long, which freaked me out a little bit more.
Yeah,
I was
and
like,
actually, one of my friends, he has some property, and we went to it, and that was exactly what we saw. We went on his property, and there was this big boulder and another boulder on top of it, and I even saw it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he's like, he was just kind of freaked out, and he's like, that was not there. He's like, I did not do this. Like, those two rocks, that one was there and that one was over there. And now all of a sudden they're on top of each other. And these are big rocks, These aren't something like you and me can just, like, maybe
there's
four
no
of us.
way.
Right.
Like,
But-
there's
but,
no
yeah, I
way.
mean, his
Like,
property
even,
is,
like,
like-
the strongest man I know couldn't have lifted some of these
and
up.
he doesn't even have a house there. It's just land that he owns in the middle of nowhere. And then we just went to it just kind of actually shoot some guns. So that's why we went. But then we was like, well, that's weird. So yeah. So
I get the theory of maybe somebody, buried a body or there's something, but you're in the middle of the woods. Like, why would you go all the trouble to bring a bunch of rocks that you clear out way down from the mountain? That when you just buried it, the dirt there is
my
very
thing
soft.
is, like, when it comes to this stuff, like, I always just try to come up from a, like, devil's advocate point of view.
Which
That's
I
why-
did.
and
I
it's
stood
like-
there and, like, I tossed it over in my head, like, things it could be, and then I just couldn't rationalize. I was at a point I can't rationalize this.
That's what I'm saying. These things are not, like, absolute, right? They act as good guides. So then you can start looking around. The other thing is, like, you may find a really massive tree trunk, like, not from a tree that's broken or, like, fell over on another
One that
tree.
got
like,
ripped
maybe
out?
just, like, ripped out, or just a trunk, like a big trunk, that's leaning up against a big boulder, leaning up against a rock. You may find a couple trunks that are kind of lined up or laid out in a weird way that, you know, so
Which
these are
we
all
did
signs.
Find
we
that,
found
a tree that was
Yeah.
like fallen over, and we thought like, oh, it just fell over. But the closer we got, there was no hole.
There was no hole.
Roots.
There was
there
no
was,
roots.
It wasn't
It was
uprooted.
just.
It was moved.
It was moved to
It was
put on
moved
top of
there,
that.
and
Then
was-
you know, like, okay, something.
And there were rocks placed around the bottom.
There was
of it.
rocks placed on the bottom.
That
So
was
that's when I was like, okay, yeah, we're in a good area right here. You know, these are all good signs. Not saying it's absolute, but these are like good signs to look for. So I found, like, from my understanding, like strictly from my understanding of doing this, like, if you know, they're kind of territorial. So they have their own area that they like, you know, that they go to, and you know, if you go in their space, sometimes they may not like that, and so you may sometimes walk in a forest and you may feel, all of a sudden you may just feel freaked out, like something's here, something's watching us. You just got a bad feeling. You feel like you have to go. So there's that, but there's also times when, you know, they're also curious, from my understanding. So, you know, if you're hunting them, for example, not necessarily like with a gun or something, but I mean, if you're like really like, let's go find
I want to
Bigfoot
find
kind of thing,
like
you know,
evidence,
and you're really intense.
photo evidence film.
Yeah,
Not gonna
there
happen.
could be some, you know, you may not encounter much, but then there's other times you go and you're just chilling in the forest and you're like, let's just play some music and just have a good time. You know, that may be when you start hearing things, because they'll get curious about what you're doing. The energy is relaxed, calm. You're actually like doing something, you know, you're trying to put out something good, so you could actually start hearing things. And so it's a good time to kind of listen for stuff and hear different things.
It's kind of like the opposite of ghosts. When you like try to go ghost searching, all you find is bad things.
True. Kind of true. Yeah. Yeah, and if I think, you know, they're like, there's a lot of questions out there, and I think that they're, you know, from my understanding, that, you know, they don't attack people or anything. I think there has been cases, but it's like very rare, like extremely rare.
Well, and the other thing too, if especially if we were to kill a person, how are you gonna tell that between that or the difference between like a bear attack or some other big ass animal, or just being left out to nature?
So so I can kind of tell a funny story, actually. So
About Bigfoot?
about Bigfoot. Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's not a funny story, but it's a true story that happened. So
You don't mean like funny, haha, like funny.
Yeah, funny, interesting, more or less. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Bite
That's
us,
what I meant.
haha.
Yeah, it's not less.
Yeah,
less haha. Yeah.
weird.
So one day I'm just like looking on YouTube and I came across this video of this guy who took Rob and I for one of our lives, because that was when we had a green screen, and during the beginnings, when we first were doing lives, we couldn't project anything on the green screen while we're going live, so we just had a green screen behind us. So this guy took one of our videos and superimposed himself next to us.
I remember that.
Yeah. So like Rob and I was talking, he's sitting there between us, like looking at us like, yeah, really, you know, and then it was so funny. And so we happened to see this video, and so I just started dying laughing about it, and I was like, dude, we should show this on our live just because it's so funny. I didn't know if the guy was actually making fun of us or what, but I was like, this is hilarious.
Either way, yeah.
You know, so we ended up showing it on one of our lives, and the guy contacted us, and he's like, dude, I'm a huge fan of your show, actually, and everything. And I was like, wow. So I got to talking with him, and he's like, I've actually been doing a lot of Bigfoot stuff my whole life. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, I don't know if you know the story, but my mom was the one in the 60s who got attacked in her car by Bigfoot. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah. And then he said that, you know, it's been hard because no one ever believed her. But there's a couple news reports.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, so she was in her car driving, and it was, I can't remember now off the top of my head where it was, somewhere in the eastern U.S. I can't remember. It's been a while since I talked to him now. But, yeah, she got in her car, and then literally she said this giant ape thing, you know, we started, like, beating on her car and everything else. it was interesting because, yeah, it's been a while since I kind of talked about this and since I talked to him about it. But I think probably something happened to trigger it.
Right.
You know, I don't think it was like actually going, you know, maybe like it was like a wrong place at the wrong time or something happened anyway. And I don't think it was like trying to eat her or anything else. But it definitely freaks her out. And she just stopped talking about it because, you know, people were always making fun of her and everything. But he like really has been researching Bigfoot for a very long time, and he actually wanted to make a documentary about his mom, about her whole experience. And he's like, it's totally like Bigfoot country, like where I live and everything else. So it was just really fascinating. So he was like trying to talk his mom into us interviewing her, and it was kind of starting to happen. And then like so much was going on, we just kind of lost communication. But I think I'm still friends with him on Facebook. I haven't talked to him in a while. But anyways, it's just kind of an interesting story because it was like one of the few stories that I've heard where somebody actually said they were attacked. Normally, they're usually kind of like
spotted and probably freaked out.
Playful, and you know, if you see them, they're usually a little bit more kind of like, I don't know what the right word, not really playful, but kind of semi-playful. Like they like to have fun. Like my friend who saw one, who you guys talked to, he was just like, it was walking and it just stopped and it was like almost like a wave like to him. Hey. It was like, hey, and then it just like kept going and he was like, it was gone. And he was like, dude, some dude in a gorilla suit just like waved hi to me, you know? And I'm like, yeah, it's super weird. So, but anyway, you know, so it's just really fascinating because, you know, we're just meeting so many different people, like with you guys, that have interesting stories and everything else.
Right.
So, yeah. But you know, I mean, I've definitely heard Bigfoot, and we talked about it on the show, or at least what we assumed was Bigfoot. I can't really say for sure that it was. I personally have not seen one, but I do know people personally who have seen them and have even interacted with them, as they say. So, kind of interesting, though.
I definitely think yesterday when we went on our little excursion was very, very interesting.
Yeah, it was.
That we did see. We did not see Bigfoot, but we did see some very interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, and there's definitely
could not have been, but
yeah, and like actually, so James, who we know, who owns the ranch at East Seti, the one I was telling you about, and I've got all those UFO experiences up there that you guys can show some of those that I've got up there, you know, so showing you guys, you know, I mean, it was taken by me, it was legit like what we saw, you know.
Oh, it is a craft. Oh, wow. Yep, I see it. I got it. I'm recording it.
That's not it. Whoa.